some sorts of restrictions as well. Supposedly some of those are coming off, but they should have never happened in the first place. They had no justification.
Well, I do think the negative thing, just saying swine flu was a bad deal.
Really bad. Really bad.
Yeah.
And I mean, I think you all heard it. There was one set of pigs in Canada that got them from a person. Now, my understanding is that set of pigs never gave it to anybody else. And the only people that have ever gotten it are from people. Now, so they haven't gotten it from pigs. They haven't gotten it from any other species. In fact, Russia, when they put their ban on, they not only restricted pork, but they restricted chicken meat and beef. Now, how do you make that stretch? I guess somehow you want to not import beef, I guess, and you're looking for an excuse. And so, you know, it created a lot of problems. It created an excuse. It makes us all gun shy on how folks are going to react, even if we have a case in Iowa, you know, turkeys or egg layers or somebody else has a flu that is not contagious at all, not a problem. It's low grade, but is somebody going to overreact in a political way?
And a few people that have died from it, I think they've had complications of something else. And if you go with the regular flu, there's probably 20,000 people a year die from the flu.
Yeah, I've heard in the U.S. 30,000 or 35,000 a year that die from the regular flu.
And we lost, what, 4 or 5?
Yeah. Yes,
I want to steer clear of politics for a second.
For a second, he said. For a second.
The state auditor, well, you mentioned earlier how your budget that starts July 1 is going to be significantly smaller than the one you had for the year you're just about to close out. We hear a lot about cuts, but then the state auditor tells us that we just signed into law the largest state budget in the history of Iowa. So I guess my question to you is, are you just that efficient?
Well, we will not spend more money than we get, so we will have to be that efficient. Certainly, some of those extra dollars went to pay for extra costs for education, some other programs. George Weber talked about more childhood education that's being funded as well. There is a challenge in all this that legislators go through, and how deep do you cut to still get stuff done, and how do you create efficiencies, and where is that? And I think we all argue in our own businesses as we've done things. We know that from time to time it's not an unhealthy thing to go through finding your efficiencies and finding out whether you're doing all the things, whether all the things you're doing you really have to be doing. I mean, I farmed in the 80s, and you know, even looking at a budget this year for a farm budget, you don't have what you thought you were going to have last year. So you have a different amount of spending that you can do, and you say, you know, I'm not going to trade that tractor that I thought I was going to trade. And that's not a bad thing to go through. I'd argue that for us it's not a bad thing as well. But there is a point that
clearly not everybody wants going through that.
Well,
we're spending more money next year than we did this year.
We are spending more money. We're spending more money. We're spending some of the stimulus money to replace some of the one-time money, or to pay for ongoing costs that will still be there if there is no stimulus next year as well. There's a lot of reason to be very concerned about next year's budget. You heard the majority party say that too. But right now we're maybe $800 million upside down for next year's budget. Well, there's a lot of folks that are betting on a stimulus package coming next year as well. A state, you know, federal money coming in. They borrow all they want, you know. And they see states having all kinds of problems. So they may have to do that again. After all, next year's an election year. So there's an argument that they'll be able to do that again. But you look at this. They said they just had a auction on bonds, and they auctioned off $100 billion worth of bonds. Not just a bare start at some of the spending that we have. We haven't started to spend a bunch of this money yet. That's a lot of money to go out there and ask people to loan to the government and or print It's hard to do all this stuff without having some kind of.
You see who bought most of them?
I didn't see. Was it Chinese? I know the Chinese
No.
have been there,
No.
but who was it?
We bought them back ourselves.
Oh, we bought them back.
Now, doesn't that make sense?
Oh, we don't want the interest rate to be too high, so we charge ourselves less interest.
Yeah, they bought them back themselves.
Is that right?
70-some% of them.
Is that right?
Yeah.
It was interesting, as we were in China, we were talking certainly to some of the
Borrow
Chinese
money,
folks.
buy our own money.
That some of the Chinese folks that had paid attention to a lot of this stuff, and as we're sitting there, this would have been March, end of March. And so we're sitting down with some of these Chinese folks, and they've been reading the paper and knowing what's going on, and they say, you know, we've got a stimulus package here in China. All our money is going to infrastructure. We're building roads, we're doing stuff for that. Now, we're a little nervous that an awful lot of your stimulus is going to banks and not really happening. You know, it's tough to find where it stops.
Aren't the dairy farmers getting the bailout?
Well, and that, I mean, the USDA bought some dairy products, but other than that,
Cow herd reduction?
cow herd reduction, actually, the CWT program is funded by dairy farmers. They pay money into a fund, and it's not federal money that buys those cows back out. It's their dairy farmer money because they believe that if we've got too much production, it's worth it for us to pay a small amount and get rid of some of those cows because the price will bounce back because we'll have less milk. So the CWT program is dairy farmer money. That doesn't mean that there was a dairy buyout back in the 80s that certainly impacted the beef producers a lot as well. That was federal money. This right now is not federal money. That's not to say that things don't change tomorrow. But that CWT program, that buyout is not federal money. But that doesn't mean, that there's not other pieces.
Even those herd reductions would still have an impact on the pork and beef market.
They will. We got a meat market that is struggling, both internationally and domestically, because folks are worried about all this stuff. There's a certain confidence piece. There's real money that goes out and how much money is out there, but there's also a confidence piece. Everybody's nervous when you look at this stuff, and everybody wants to spend a little bit less, which is not a bad strategy when this is all happening. But when that happens, who you used to buy stuff from don't do as well if you're all spending a little bit less. And meat is one of those areas right now. And it's hurt. We got $80 cattle, and in fact, in cases slipping under that. And pork producers have had probably 18 months of losses. You start piling this up, and it has a big impact. Other questions?
A farm question, kind of. I'm kind of a somewhat small farmer, and all these regulations you hear rumors about, like the carbon, tax and gas from the cows or whatever, dust from the combines. And now I heard the other day that Governor Culver signed a bill about not hauling manure on frozen ground. What is the climate in government? Is it, you always hear them say pro-family farmer, which, I assume, the small to middle-sized farms and family farms. That kind of stuff's going to drive us out of business, I feel. And it's going to be all these corporate farmers, which are going to be worse for the environment.
I think we have, last election, collectively, we as a country and as a state, chosen folks that are more interested in regulation. Believe that government has more of those answers, whether it's healthcare, whether it's environment. EPA is going to be much more aggressive, certainly going to be more aggressive on livestock issues and agricultural issues. In fact, some of those folks will say, ag's been getting away with it for a while. Now it's time to regulate it. So, those are not fun things to hear when you talk about what the real life impact is on folks that are regulated. You all know how it works, any kind of business. Right now we got folks sitting at a kitchen table trying to decide whether you're going to build a building, whether you're going to buy a piece of ground. You're looking at this stuff and you say, maybe I'll wait. I'm hearing this stuff